Good morning. 2 weeks, 4 classes, guys. We're almost there. You can definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. We are at a very good position. In the last class, we introduced this derived cost structure of a firm. I'll remind you all about it. The great thing about it is you've basically been through the most confusing and challenging part of derivation of the behavior of the firm. And as a result, now we can simply harness the power of that tool that we derived, and we can learn from it at a really good pace. Also, I lucked out and found some extra markers, which is pretty much impossible in this building at this time of the semester, so it's going to be easier for you to follow. So let's first recall what is it we're doing. We are studying behavior of the firm. Do you remember why? Why do we care about the behavior of the firm? What do we even mean by behavior of the firm? Do you have any intuition about that? Well, what do we mean? Look at it this way. What's a human behavior? It's stuff you do, right? How you behave in all kinds of situations. Firms' behavior is also all kinds of things firms does, right? Firms' behavior could include HR policy, right? Who they hire, who they fire. It could include R&D policy, research and development. Do they do their own research development? Do they subcontract somebody's research and development, and so on and so forth, right? What else? Marketing. Is marketing part of firm's behavior? Yeah. Sure. How you market yourself? Do you market yourself as a fun brand for young people, or boring for old people, or whatever, right? In other words, all those are ways in which firms behave. Is that what we study here as a firm's behavior? Marketing, HR, research and development, is that what we're talking about here? Absolutely not.
How to make profit.
We are focusing our attention on only one aspect of the firm's behavior. Just one aspect, and that is a choice of quantity the firm produces. Okay? In other words, we're not worried about how many people they hire and fire and what their requirements are for bachelors and PhDs and whatnot. We don't care about that, right? All we care about how many pizzas that firm produces. That's what we mean by behavior of the firm. And we're studying this aspect of behavior of the firm, assuming that the firm chooses quantity in order to maximize the profit. Exactly. Alright, so now we know what it is we're studying. We're studying behavior of the firm, meaning choice of the quantity the firm produces. And you will see that from now on until the end of the semester, you will see that we are looking for that quantity. First and foremost, quantity the firm is producing. Now, we understand what it is we're doing. Why are we doing this? What's the point? Because that's what they write about in textbooks, right? They do. But why? Do you remember what this entire course is about? What micro is about?
Efficiency.
It's all about efficiency, exactly. And we know that in order to find the source of efficiency, you can't look at the economy as a whole. It's not enough to look at the health of the economy. You have to look at the basic building blocks of the economy, and that's the market, right? So that's why we've spent first 4 weeks looking at the market for one good. There we gained some insight, but we didn't find complete answer to what makes a market efficient. That's why we're looking even deeper, right? Well, what's deeper than the market? Market is producers with their supply, consumers with their demand, interacting in the market that produces equilibrium quantity at equilibrium price, correct? That's the market. What does it mean to look even deeper? That means to look at supply, and instead of looking at all the producers who produce pizza, we look at one producer, right? One firm, totally up close. That's what we mean by studying the firm behavior. Basically, we're hoping to find the source of efficiency at the level of a single firm. That makes sense? So that's what we're trying to do, and that's how we're trying to do it. Now, a couple classes ago, we set out to understand how the firm chooses that quantity by studying first total cost and then total revenue, right? And we learned several things. We learned, first of all, that total cost looks something like this, right? Do you remember why total cost looks like this, if this is the fixed cost? It's the law of diminishing marginal product, right? Remember, there's only one correct answer to every cost question, the law of diminishing marginal product. So when I ask you why the total cost looks this way, the answer is the law of diminishing marginal product. So we learned that's what total cost looks like. Then we asked, what does the total revenue look like? And the answer was? Do you remember what total revenue looks like? If you bake no pizza, how much revenue do you generate?
0.
0. When you sell one pizza at $10,
10.
$10. 2 pizzas,
20.
20. 3 pizzas,
30.
30. So, what is the shape of total revenue?
Straight.
Straight rising line, correct? Upward sloping straight line, total revenue. You combine total revenue and total cost, and you get a picture like that. And in that picture, you find what?
Trench, whatever that is.
You find the quantity at which the firm maximizes the profit, correct? We did that, right? We did that. We found the quantity at which slope of total cost is equal to slope of total revenue, right? Did we do this? Did we have this picture on the board? I believe we did. Very good. So, see, we found the quantity the firm produces, the quantity the firm produces and the profit it generates. We found it all. Then I told you we're gonna transform this picture into a picture with derived cost functions. And in the process, we're not gonna learn anything new about econ. That's what I told you, right? It's basically like transforming your annual salary to your monthly salary. If you're making 60 grand annually, 60,000 per year, and I tell you you're making 5,000 per month, are you shocked? Is that a new information for you? Yes or no? No. It's the same information, only formatted in per month terms. That make sense? Same thing here, guys. We take total revenue and total cost and transform it into per pizza terms, which is averages. And then we transform it into marginals, which is cost of baking additional pizza or revenue generated from selling another pizza. Those are the marginals. And in the process, we're not going to learn anything new. We're just going to reformat this picture into something looking different. And so we did that. We did that, and this is what we got. We got two U's, correct? Two U's. Marginal cost U and average total cost U. Right? We did that. Do you remember why those two U's relate the way they do? Why is it that marginal cost intersects average total cost at the minimum of average total cost? What was the example we used to explain the mutual positioning of these curves? We in fact used that example that had nothing to do with econ. We talked about your GPA, do you remember?
Right, yeah.
What was the story there? If instead of average total cost, you think of this curve as your GPA, your average, grade point average. I mean, it's average, so it's average, right? Whether it's average cost or average grade, it's still an average. And think of marginal cost as your marginal grade. It means the grade you're gonna get on the next exam, okay? Well, if on next few exams you're getting horrible grades like these, deeply under average grades, what's going to happen to your average? It's going to go down. In other words, below average grades drag average down, correct?
Right.
What do you have to do to drag your average up again?
Get above average.
You have to start getting above average grades. That makes sense?
Yeah.
If that's true about averages, if that's true about grades, it's true about costs. It's just the nature of marginals and averages. If the marginals are below average, they drag average down. Once the marginal cost is above average, it drags average up. That's all there is to it. Does that make sense? Very good. Now, we're going to use this cost structure, this derived cost structure of the firm to find the firm's profit maximizing quantity Q star. How are we going to do it?
How did you figure out where to put that point again on there? I know it has to do with the parallel lines. but-
Exactly. Well, you're trying to maximize the profit. And you find the maximum profit where the distance, vertical distance between total cost and total revenue is the greatest.
Okay.
How do you find that point where that vertical distance is the greatest? You're looking for a point along the total cost curve at which the tangent to total cost curve is parallel to total revenue. That's the whole idea. That makes sense? In other words, you could rephrase it, you could write that the firm produces quantity Q star at which slope, right? Slope of total cost is equal to the slope of what? Slope of total cost is equal to the slope of total revenue, right? That's what you would call it in English, right? This profit maximization condition. What would you call it in math? What fancy word do mathematicians use for slope? Derivative, right? Derivative. So you could say the firm produces quantity Q star at which derivative of total cost equals derivative of total revenue. But economists have to set themselves apart from the pack, so they use their own language. What is the slope in econ? Marginal, exactly. So what's the slope of total cost? Marginal cost. And what is the slope of total revenue? Marginal revenue, right? So the firm produces quantity at which marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So that's what we learned in the last class. Now, we then talked about it and we actually explained why this is the case. First of all, do you remember what marginal revenue is for a pizza place that sells every pizza for $10? Generally speaking, guys, what is marginal revenue in your own words?
Average cost.
It's not average. I asked marginal revenue, right? That's what I asked. Marginal is not average, that's the point. Look, if you have a GPA of 3.5 and you go to an exam and you get a D, is D your average?
No.
So you can't say marginal is the same as average, because they're not, right? So what is marginal? What is marginal revenue?
You increase in revenue when you sell one more unit.
Bingo, the increase in revenue when you sell one more unit. In other words, the revenue you generate by selling another pizza, right? Absolutely. Marginal cost is the cost of baking one more pizza, right? Which may or may not be average. It may be higher than average, lower than average. Marginal revenue is the revenue from selling another pizza. Marginal cost is the cost of baking additional pizza. So marginal revenue is the revenue you generate from selling additional pizza. What is your marginal revenue if you sell every pizza for $10? It's $10 because if you sell another pizza, you're going to sell it for $10. Does that make sense? So if you're selling every unit at the same price, marginal revenue is that price, correct? So you can basically simplify it into marginal cost equals price, right? That is your profit maximizing condition, as long as you are selling every unit for the same price. Very good. Now, do you remember the intuitive interpretation of this condition? If you can bake another pizza at the cost of $7 and you sell it for $10, should you bake it? Why? Correct. Why?
It's like a $3 profit.
Because you make additional $3 profit. If you can bake one more pizza at the cost of $8 and sell it for $10, should you do it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. In other words, what does this condition tell us? Keep increasing production all the way
To the end.
to the point where there is no more profit to be made, right? Where baking additional pizza would not yield any more profit. That makes sense? There you go. In other words, you could actually read, make as much money as you can, right? That's basically what it says. Okay, now, to find that quantity, of course, we need marginal cost, which we do have in this picture. What is the price? Well, the price is, let's say, $10 per pizza, right? Good morning. Where does the price come from, guys? How do firms know, how do pizza places know how much to sell pizza for? Well, if you open a pizza place, just look at surrounding pizza places, there's always a few of them somewhere in the neighborhood, and you see, right? In other words, that price is given to you by the market, right? It's in equilibrium, absolutely. Absolutely. In other words, you as a firm get information about the price from the market, guys. So if this is your firm, this is a picture of your firm, this here is a picture of a market. Okay? And in the market, of course, there's supply and demand, and there's market output. And this is only the price because this market in equilibrium demand gives you this equilibrium price. That makes sense? So if this is the market in equilibrium, this is the market equilibrium quantity, and this is the market equilibrium price. Your firm takes that price as given, and produces correspondingly. Notice, we have a bunch of terminology and a bunch of notation now. We have lowercase q, uppercase q. What's the difference between lowercase, uppercase q?
Uppercase is the entire market.
Uppercase is the entire market with many pizza places. Lowercase is
One
occupy
market.
a single firm, right? So we are basically assuming that this market is populated by a bunch of firms represented by the supply curve, and each of those firms looks like this. In other words, this is your representative firm, your typical pizza place, okay? That's the idea. Now, can you tell me, how does this typical firm behave? It means what quantity it chooses to produce. The quantity that maximizes the profit. How do you find that quantity? It's the quantity at which marginal cost reaches the price, right? Marginal cost reaches the price. Correct? Q star. Very good, guys. So, we found that the industry is in equilibrium, and at that equilibrium price, typical firm produces Q star, and all those firms together, each of them producing Q star, together they produce equilibrium market output. That make sense? That's all there is to it. Now, remind me, did we at the end of the last class show profit of the firm in this picture? I have a vague recollection, I think we did. Let's recall how to do that. First of all, the firm is producing this quantity, bless you.
Thank you, sir.
And, you are very welcome, and sells each pizza at that price, right? Sells each pizza at that price. What's the cost of baking an average pizza when you bake this many pizzas?
Where the Q line meets the ATC line.
Exactly. This is the cost of baking an average pizza. So imagine, this is how much you sell a pizza for. This is how much you bake an average pizza for. If this is how much you sell it for, this is how much it costs you to bake. The difference is the profit. Profit you make on an average pizza. But you don't make just one average pizza, you make a lot of pizzas. So how do you find the profit you make on all the pizzas?
Multiply it.
You multiply the profit you make on an average pizza times the quantity of all pizzas, right? And that is your profit, correct? Now, is this a positive profit or negative profit?
Positive.
Positive profit, very good. So here, profit is greater than 0. If I remember correctly, towards the end of the last class, we talked about the distinction between accounting profit and economic profit, didn't we?
Why would it not just be that smaller shape, smaller area where the average total cost intersects with the PE? It goes all the way, in other words, because your average total cost would intersect with the price, so your average total cost would be lower, would intersect with your price. So
You know, in other words, you're suggesting that the profit should probably be smaller or just part of
it
it?
should be, in that part, because intuitively it would seem like your average total cost would intersect with your selling price.
Okay,
Because it's-
I think that the easiest way to show it is the following one. Since we don't need this anymore, let me clear this up and show you, okay? Now, I'll drag you through exactly 2 lines of algebra and everything will come out of it, okay? We know that, sorry, wrong marker. We know that profit is total revenue minus total cost, correct? We know that total revenue is price times quantity, correct? Now, is it legit to divide both sides of the equation by Q? Is that an equivalent operation? If I divide this by Q and this by Q, can I do that? Is that legitimate? Absolutely. So if I divide pi divided by Q and I divide P times Q divided by Q, what do I get? How much is P times Q divided by Q?
E.
P. How much is TC divided by Q? TC over Q. But what is TC over Q? What is your total cost per pizza? Or average, right? That's your average total cost. Okay? Now, let's multiply both sides by Q. If I multiply P over Q times Q, what do I get? Profit. And on the right-hand side, I get P minus ATC times Q. Profit is price minus average total cost, price minus average total cost, times the quantity. Times the quantity. Okay? That's algebra. I can imagine you're convinced because, hey, algebra. But you didn't see it there, right? Here's how you see it. First of all, profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost, right? What is total revenue? Total revenue is price times quantity. So if this is your quantity, and this is the price, price times quantity is the area of the entire large square, or whatever, rectangle. It doesn't have to be square. That is your total revenue, okay? But what is your total cost? Well, it's your average cost times the quantity. So this is your total cost. So if the large rectangle is your total revenue, smaller rectangle is your total cost, then profit is the difference between the large rectangle and small rectangle, which is the profit. Does that make sense? All right, guys. At the end of the last class, if I remember correctly, we introduced the distinction between economic profit and accounting profit, didn't we? Didn't we talk about Bill Gates? Oh, what did we learn from that story? I was talking to you about your classmate Joe or something like that, right?
Yeah, like when we kind of like opportunities or something like that. I can't remember. Something
Exactly.
about different opportunities when you leave one on the table.
In other words, if you start a business and you make 200 grand a year
Yeah.
in profit, everybody congratulates you
But you left the 500.
and is jealous of you, right?
Right.
But if you're running that business and making those big bucks because you decided to do it on your own, and in the process you turned down a $500,000 offer from Google, then the $200,000 you were making doesn't sound like a great success, right?
You lose.
Say it again?
You lose.
So, how much are you losing
300.
basically? 300,000, right? So your accountant tells you, congratulations, you made $200,000. And you're like, oh my God, I lost 300,000. How do you get loss of 300,000 out of $200,000 accounting profit? By subtracting the opportunity cost, right?
500.
If opportunity cost is $500,000 that you gave up to start the business,
Minus 200.
then 200,000 minus 500,000 is negative 300,000, right? That's how you get the economic loss. That's the difference. Again, why do we have to think in terms of economic profit and not accounting profit? What's the point?
Of another opportunity that you could have.
Okay, and why is that important? In this context, guys. Because if you don't know the opportunities people have or people had in the past, you cannot possibly understand their behavior. For example, why firms join an industry? Why do firms leave an industry? Okay? Why do people become accountants? Because accounting is basically about as sexy as being an actor or actress, right? Hollywood is nothing compared to an accounting firm. Is that why we have so many accountants?
Could it be?
Okay, so you see, you can't, unless you understand opportunities, you cannot possibly explain why would anyone become an accountant, right?
It's too much headache. Sexy.
I have a good friend who, every time we hang out together and we meet new people, he always tells people that, asks people, do you know what the difference between accountants and economists is? Well, they both love numbers, but economists don't have the accountant's charisma. That's how much he likes me. So, but you get the idea, right? You have to understand the best opportunities to be able to explain behavior. Why did, in the 80s, nurses flee healthcare? Was it because in the 80s American nurses were heartless people who didn't find satisfaction saving human lives and tending to the sick and desperate?
The
No.
salary.
Back then, nurses were just as compassionate and good and competent as they are now. What explains the fact that in the 80s they were fleeing the industry is that they had better opportunities elsewhere. In other words, it's not that nurses were dying of hunger in the 80s. I'm sure they were not. The point is, they found much better opportunities somewhere else, right? This is why we have to use economic profit as opposed to accounting profit, so that we can explain why people in the long run move into some industries and out of other industries. Does it make sense? Good morning. So, here we found out that not only typical firm is making positive profit, it's making positive economic profit. In other words, the profit we are calculating here is not just accounting profit, it's economic profit. So here, it tells us that the firm is making positive economic profit in this industry. In English, explain to me, what does it mean that a firm is making positive economic profit? How do you recognize positive economic profit? Good morning. Did we talk about that produce store in Virginia?
Greater than zero.
Say it again?
It's greater than zero.
That is greater than zero. What does it mean in real life? How do you recognize someone making positive economic
There's
profit?
not many firms in the market.
That is one possibility. That's how it can happen. You are right. But again, how do you recognize?
That's a person.
You have a new neighbor moves into your neighborhood, and all you know, you go in, introduce yourself, and they tell you, yeah, I also went to FSCJ, and yeah, I also graduated with AA, and and then I started this job that I'm having now.
Pay me good.
How can you recognize? What tells you that this dude is making positive economic profit?
Nice car.
The police.
Driving an enormous car, exactly.
With little sign.
Yes, and tells you, oh gee, I love traveling the world. Just next week, kids and my wife are planning to spend an extended weekend in Tokyo because you gotta go shopping in Tokyo. It's fantastic. You never shopped in Tokyo? Seriously? You don't know what you're missing. We're going there 6th time this year. Right? That tells you, whoa, with an AA from FSCJ, you go shopping in Tokyo 6 times a year. Does that make sense, guys? That tells you positive economic profit. In other words, more than you, right? More than an average family of someone with an AA. That's the point. That makes sense?
Yeah.
That's what positive economic profit is. Now, why is it important that we Americans are so observant about people's awesome success? Guys, don't take me wrong. People talk about jealousy and whatnot, envy and so on. Here in America, positive economic profit is actually a great positive force. Because instead of people wasting time being jealous and envious, people do what?
Be great.
And emulate them,
Yes,
right? Emulate the example, in other words,
Competition.
exactly, you have this neighbor and the neighbor can do all that with an AA from FSCJ, so, you know, next time during a cookout, you ask, hey, what line of business are you in? Oh, gee, didn't I tell you I'm selling Livestrong bands or something, right? Really? Selling Livestrong bands, you can make that kind of, you have no idea. Well then, how much arm twisting is it gonna take for you to start selling Livestrong bands, right? So that's the whole idea, guys. If you see that somebody's making positive economic profit, doing something you could too, not everybody, but enough people in the long run will join that industry. That makes sense? Very good. And when firms join the industry, in other words, firms enter the industry, firms enter the industry, attracted by the positive economic profit. How is this industry going to change?
It's not a bad one.
Well, how is the industry going to change? Which of the two curves shifts when we have more firms in the industry?
Supply.
Supply curve shifts in which direction? As we have more firms. Okay, guys, to the right, to the left, up, down,
To the right,
to the right, correct. Why to the right?
because they're producing more.
Bingo, because that's the direction of increasing output, right? More firms enter. So, as more firms enter, supply starts shifting to the right. As supply starts shifting to the right, what happens to price? Equilibrium price?
Drops.
Drops. And as the price drops, what happens to the size of the profit?
Shrinks.
Gets smaller and smaller. When is that influx, that inflow, that entry of new firms going to stop?
Zero.
When economic profit is zero. What does it mean when economic profit is zero? What does zero economic profit look like in your neighborhood? Well, this is equilibrium too. This is also equilibrium. In the picture you're right, you're pointing at the right direction, but absolutely. You guys are smart. You have no excuse not to do well. So, how can you tell zero economic profit without ever having taken a single econ class?
Those are driving Malibus.
Exactly. On the other side, there's a neighbor driving a 6-year-old Malibu, right? Taking good care of it. It's a nice car. Exactly. Takes one vacation a year fishing at the Lake Okeechobee. I mean, that's what everybody pretty much does.
What kind of fish?
I mean, guys, it may sound like, it's still America. You know, how many people around the world get to fish Lake Okeechobee ever? I mean, it's fantastic. Let's not, you know, I'm not talking anything down. It's just something that your average working professional in Florida can do, right? That's zero economic profit. Again, why is it important to realize that this is the way it is? Because when someone tells you, gee, you wouldn't believe it. Do you remember Joe from high school? Yeah, I remember Joe from high school. He just took a 1-week vacation at Okeechobee, fishing. And you're like, and good for him. Does it mean you immediately inquire like, my goodness, what line of business is he in? I gotta get me in that. Because, whoa, fishing Okeechobee, I tell you. Again, right, that zero economic profit, it doesn't inspire you to emulate Joe's example. That makes sense? On the other hand, somebody tells you, hey, do you remember Mary? Sure, Mary. Oh gosh, she was that math head. She was so bright, so clever. Yeah, and she got her PhD. Really? What did she get PhD in? Oh, I don't know, English or anthropology or something. How's she doing? Oh gosh, I don't know. I just saw her the other day and she had these worn out shoes and funky clothes and she was pushing this broken down rusty bicycle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope she's healthy or whatnot. And how are you doing? And she told me, gee, you know, I just love my job, but you know, I can't even afford a car anymore. You know, I'm basically working part-time in the local museum, dusting off those cavemen or something, you know. And so, no, I mean, Mary's fine, she's not dying of hunger or anything like that. But with a PhD, do you think she could do better?
Yes.
Well, you ask her, well, you must really love your job, right? And Mary tells you, well, you know, no matter how I'm loving my job, you know, in a month, you're not going to find me there, right? Because I'm going to find something better. In other words, you see negative economic profit, and that tells you people will not stick around. People will eventually move out of that industry. That makes sense?
Yes.
That's all there's to it. So here, we have positive economic profit, and firms will keep entering as long as there's positive economic profit to be made. Once price is so low that there is no more economic profit to be made, which is when supply shifts from S to S prime, price is that low, at that new low equilibrium price, firm maximizes the profit. Where's the condition? We had it somewhere here, right? Firm maximizes the profit by producing quantity at which price equals marginal cost, right? Price equals marginal cost. Let's call that quantity Q star star, right? Is that what we called it? Q star star? Good. Okay. That's the new quantity. So, let's summarize. We started with an industry in an equilibrium. This was an equilibrium. But that equilibrium didn't last forever. Why? Because in that equilibrium, typical firm is making positive economic profit, which attracts entry of new firms, right? So profit is positive, firms enter, supply curve shifts to the right, correct? Supply curve shifts to the right. As a result, price falls. And as the price is falling, what does the firm do?
Produce less.
Produces less. Firm output falls. And the market, what does the market do?
Produce more.
Market produces more. Market output rises. In other words, once you have industry in an equilibrium with positive economic profit, things happen and industry changes, right? That's basically, you could say, sequence, or basically confluence of phenomena that take place, right? Firms are entering, shifting supply to the right, pushing price down. Each firm responds by producing less. Market as a whole ends up producing more. By the way, how is it possible that when every firm produces less, the market produces more?
More foreign firms.
Because there are more firms. I don't know if foreign, but more firms, right? They don't have to be foreign. You didn't say
No,
foreign.
I was just kind of.
I'm just putting words in your mouth. It happens all the time. You have to scream at me, I can't hear you. So, very good. So, because there are more firms, that's how the market ends up producing more stuff, okay? Now, the process we just described is a process of long-run adjustment in this industry, where the firm moves from or transitions, or the market transitions from this short-run equilibrium into this equilibrium. Is this also a short-run equilibrium? That is a long-run equilibrium. Why is that a long-run? Why is that a long-run equilibrium? How much profit is the firm making in this new equilibrium? Zero economic profit. How many more firms does that zero economic profit going to attract? How far will the supply shift past S prime? It's not. See, it's a long-run equilibrium. So, the industry transitions from short-run to long-run equilibrium. And the firm also transitions from equilibrium output with positive economic profit to equilibrium output with zero economic profit. Okay? Excuse me. So we think of equilibrium in the firm as producing the quantity that maximizes the profit. By the way, why does it make sense? Why does it make sense to think of profit maximizing quantity as an equilibrium quantity produced by the firm? Because when you are producing profit maximizing quantity in your firm, do you have any reason to increase output? If this is the output at which you're maximizing profit, do you have any incentive to bake more? Yes or no?
No.
Do you have any reason to bake less?
No.
So you are in
You're at a good
equilibrium.
harmonious equilibrium.
I love it. What equilibrium?
A good harmonious equilibrium.
Good harmonious equilibrium.
Write that down.
I like that. Harmonious. I like that. The sound of that. Very good.
Write that down.
You know what the problem with the word harmonious is?
We're not learning.
Once you say it again.
Nothing's wrong with it.
No. You're right. Nothing's wrong with it. The only problem is it's being used by stuff like harmonic series, harmonic things, and by harmonic you're talking about basically vibrations. In other words, some dynamic processes. This is so static that, frankly, you came up with a word that's too good for this class.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you, Butch.
I know. That reminds me of that 80s group, guys. Do you remember? Gee, what was their name? Right Said Fred.
Jackson 5.
No, Right Said Fred. Anyone remembers Right Said Fred?
I do.
You? Oh gosh, yeah. Anyways, I'm not even sure it's appropriate. You're still children, so. Anyways. Does this make sense, guys? We just showed. We just showed the transition of an industry from short-run equilibrium to long-run equilibrium, resulting from the attraction of positive economic profit, which results in entry of new firms. Do you have any questions? So again, look, I put this picture on the board, and I can ask you, what can you tell me about the market? It's in equilibrium. What can you tell me about the firm? It maximizes the profit. And if the profit is positive, what can you tell me about the market? More firms enter, shift supply to the right, price falls. Typical firm will find a new equilibrium making zero economic profit, and firm and the market end up in the long run equilibrium. In other words, what do you think is the long-run prospect of this market? Producing equilibrium output in long-run equilibrium. That's what's going to happen. Let me now show you a different market and a different firm. Say, we have a typical firm with marginal cost and average total cost, producing a good in a market that looks like this. A market with this supply and this demand. Actually, this is price, market quantity, equilibrium quantity, equilibrium price. Okay, so we have a market in equilibrium. This is a typical firm of which there are many in this market. Tell me, what is this firm doing at this equilibrium price? Maximizing profit. How? By producing quantity Q star at which P equals MC. If this is the price, this is marginal cost. How much is the firm making? It is producing quantity Q star, correct? Did we have a picture like this on the board in the last class?
Yeah.
I don't recall, maybe we did. Very good, so this is the firm is doing. How much economic profit is the firm generating?
Negative.
Well, this is the price at which they're selling, and that's the cost at which they're producing. That means they are making what? Negative economic profit, right? Because cost exceed revenue. Negative economic profit. Now, given that they're making negative economic profit, first of all, what does it mean? Does it mean that this firm is going broke? Does it mean they can't pay their bills? Is that what negative economic profit means? Not necessarily. It only means they could make more somewhere else, someplace else, right? So, if typical firms in this industry are making negative economic profit, what do you think? Is this equilibrium going to last forever? Is that a long-run equilibrium? No. This equilibrium is definitely a short-run equilibrium, right? It's definitely a short-run equilibrium. Because what happens in the long run? And now get inspired by that story and just retell the story for this industry and this firm. What's going to happen in the long run in an industry where a typical firm makes negative economic profit? What will firms do? Are firms attracted to negative economic profit?
No.
So what will firms do? What's the opposite of enter? Exit. So these firms will exit because there's better opportunities elsewhere, right? So firms will exit. You have negative economic profit, firms exit. As firms are exiting, what happens to supply? Shifts to the left. And as supply shifts to the left, what happens to price, equilibrium price? Price rises. And as the price is rising, what happens to profit? It's increasing, it's becoming less negative to begin with, right? My question is, when do you think firms stop fleeing that industry? How long is that exit, that flight, gonna last?
Until it reaches equal.
until, well, it is in equilibrium, that's the thing. But until
So it's positive.
zero, until the profit is zero. Because once the profit is zero, that tells you there are no better opportunities anywhere. Negative economic profit means for these firms there are better opportunities elsewhere. When there's zero economic profit, do these firms still have better opportunities somewhere else? No more. That's why they stop leaving, right? That's the whole idea. So price rises. And as the price rises, profit approaches zero, right? And once the economic profit is zero, firms stop fleeing. My question is, how high does the price have to rise for profit to be zero? This is the equilibrium price prime, at which your typical firm chooses to produce Q star star and makes how much profit? It's mine. I've got to take it out. Okay, so once the firm makes zero economic profit, the flight of firms, exit of firms stops, and the firm is in a long-run equilibrium. How about the market? As the supply shifts to the left, it shifts all the way. What an ugly arrow. All the way to S prime, resulting in the new equilibrium price, new equilibrium quantity, QE prime, price PE prime, and the industry is now in long-run equilibrium. Correct? Very good. In other words, we told two stories, but they're very similar. They're particularly identical in the final outcome. What can you tell about these two industries? What do they have in common? In the long run, they will end up in long-run equilibrium, where your typical firm is making zero economic profit. Very good. That's what we learned. Are you excited? You might be if you knew why you should be excited about this result. What is exciting about this result, by the way, guys? I don't think we went there at the end of the last class. Did I tell you what's important about this result?
Perfect competition.
It's perfect competition. So we introduced the concept of perfect competition. Very good. And why is it important to know the properties of perfect competition in the long run? Because finally, guys, finally we get to savor the answer to the most fundamental question we've been asking from the beginning of the semester. What is this course all about? Efficiency. And we've been asking, what is the source of efficiency? Where does efficiency come from? Right? And we first played with the market and imposed policies and saw that policies knock the market out of equilibrium and efficiency decreases. Okay? So policies may negatively impact efficiency. But then, we still didn't know where the efficiency comes from. What makes that equilibrium efficient? And now we found out that in the long run, perfectly competitive industry tends to long-run equilibrium. What is so special about the long-run equilibrium that actually makes it efficient?
It's making the product at the lowest cost producing on
Because
average.
every perfectly competitive firm, in the long run, is pushed by the market to produce average unit at the lowest possible cost. Okay, so we see, right? In long run equilibrium, firms are producing quantity where marginal cost and average cost intersect. Geometrically, we also know it's the minimum average total cost, so okay, so the firms are producing at the lowest average total cost. But how does that translate into efficiency? Why is that efficient and something else not? What makes producing at the lowest average cost efficient? What makes the production at the lowest average cost efficient? Yes?
Resources can be used elsewhere.
Because producing at the lowest cost meaning producing with the least amount of resources, right? You use as few resources to produce that average pizza as is technologically possible. But if you're capable of producing an average pizza with the smallest expense of resources, then you have all the other resources left to do what? Everything else. That makes sense? Okay. Let's tie it to the idea we developed in the very beginning. What is the economy? It's a system that transforms resources, right? All those resources into goods and services. Exactly. Now, suppose you have a country that produces food, weapons, and apartments. Okay? Food, weapons, and apartments. Now picture two economies, both doing the same thing, both economies enjoying comparable resources. But one economy efficient, the other one not that efficient. The economy that's not efficient must produce food because they have to feed the people, must produce weapons to protect itself. But because it's producing inefficiently, it's not producing at the lowest cost, it's producing at high cost. That country uses up pretty much all the resources, producing just food and weapons. And after all the food and weapons are produced, all the resources are used up. How much resources are left to build the apartments?
More.
See, I grew up in a country that was puny country of 15 million people, small country. But it was world's number 6 exporter and importer of military hardware. It was big on military stuff, on weapons. It was a country that makes awesome beer and sausages and whatnot, right? But having an apartment was pretty much impossible. There was no rental market, and you want to buy an apartment. What people sometimes did, if they had the right connections, they signed up their kids at birth into a wait list. And with a little bit of luck, by 30, 35, you would qualify to get an apartment from the government. If not, forget it. You would live with your parents in a 2-bedroom apartment forever, right? And it was not the only country like that. Anyone who heard the stories or remembers, or if you come from that part of the world, Eastern Europe or former Soviet Union, Russia or something, those are the stories you hear, right? How come countries such as the former Soviet Union that actually led the space race back in the late 50s, early 60s, how could countries like that not build enough apartments for their people? Sometimes people, oftentimes people are totally confused about these things and think that, oh my gosh, these East European countries, they didn't have enough apartments because people can't even put bricks on top of each other. Is that the problem, that people in Eastern Europe don't know how to put bricks on top of each other? No, guys, if you can actually send someone to the orbit back in the 60s, you know how to put bricks on top of each other, right? The problem is that they used up all the bricks doing these things, and there were no bricks left to build apartments. That makes sense? Why? Is it because they didn't produce enough bricks? No, they produced so much bricks it's not even funny. The problem is they were not producing efficiently. In other words, they were not using those bricks efficiently. So they used up too many bricks doing these things, ran out of them, and couldn't build enough apartments. In America, in contrast, what did we do? We're producing efficiently. We're using as few bricks, as little electricity, as little of everything to produce your average good. And as a result, we have plenty of resources to build also what? Apartments and houses. And as a result, we are not just a nation that produces exorbitant amount of food, not just a nation that produces exorbitant amount of, that possesses huge military, but we're also a nation where over 60% of people own their own homes, right? That makes sense? That's the meaning of efficiency. That's what you get when firms are pushed by that competition, by that force of the market, to produce at the lowest possible cost. Okay? Okay, let's take a break. If you could kindly stop it, and I'll give you a few instructions.